Welcome back to our February midweek Wednesday night series called Why Did I Get Married? This week we are jumping into part 2. In case you missed last week, this series is dedicated to love by highlighting honest, emotional, and sometimes unusual love stories from the EC community. This docu-series dives deep into secret methods to making a marriage work. Welcome to Why Did I Get Married? A series dedicated to the journey of love.
So you guys know, like on the plaza where they have that body of water with those boats? Well, that looks so like elegant to me, and I thought it was so amazing. I was
gondola.
like, yes, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do that one day. And he was like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah. So he listened, he heard me, and we did that.
Never
but
again.
I didn't know, because like the water smelled bad.
Never
there was
again.
homeless people everywhere.
Never
There's
again.
trash everywhere. And I was
Never
like,
again.
oh, I get it. I thought it was like this amazing, magical experience, which it was. And the whole time I thought he had a ring box in his pocket. He didn't. So I cried. And then when I say I was crying, I wasn't like boo-hoo crying. It was just like 2 thug tears. I was like, I thought it was going to be something, but whatever. It better happen later. But yeah.
Okay. And so I really didn't have any nervousness leading up to it. I strongly believe that, when you pray for something and you have peace about that situation, that's what you're supposed to do. So we were getting ready for church. We were having church for New Year's Eve, and we weren't living together. So she came over to my apartment. Back then, I was into shoe reviews, like Jordans and things like that. And so my plan was I was going to have Risha film me opening a new pair of Jordans, because, that's what I was into. So I had a Jordan box, and I had her record me. I know she was like, you're such a nerd. What are you doing?
So I was in the middle of getting ready, and he was calling my name, and I was like, doesn't he know I'm getting ready? He's like, oh, I want to do a shoe review. And I was like, can we just do that when we come back? We're getting ready to go to church. He's like, no, I want to do this review right now. I was like, okay. So I was standing there recording with, I think, his phone.
And I was like, hey, what's up, everybody? I got these new Jordans in, and blah, 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 blah. And so then I opened up the box, and I was like, they gave me the wrong shoes.
It was kind of like an emotional roller coaster, because I felt so bad. My heart dropped in my stomach when he opened the box and he said, I got. So I was thinking it was an empty box. And it was a reveal, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible.
They gave me this, and then I pulled out the engagement ring.
I actually froze, and I almost dropped the phone just because I wasn't expecting it.
But no, yeah, wedding day was beautiful. It rained.
Which is a good sign.
Yeah, they say rain on the wedding day is good because when you tie a knot, the knot is stronger when it's wet. Pretty much exactly how we planned it. I mean, I remember the day, but like it just goes by so fast. We were just so busy, we don't remember anything. I do remember eating, but we were constantly getting bothered while we were eating.
Oh my gosh.
Congratulations.
People pull you this way, that way. Take a picture. You literally do not get to spend a lot of time with the person you're marrying.
It was crazy because like we were going on our honeymoon, our cruise right after that. So by the time we got done with the wedding, it was like 11 o'clock when we got to our apartment, and we just packed, and then we got on a plane. It was just a whirlwind, a beautiful whirlwind, but it was a whirlwind.
Yeah, it was definitely one of my favorite days because it's literally a day where you get to have every single person that you absolutely love in one room at the same time. It was just such a beautiful moment. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but people say like, when you marry someone, you marry their family and all the drama and things like that. And you have to make sure you have the best relationship with this person in the family and that person. It's like, no, we're all that we have. Not to say that our families are terrible, but like, that's not our number one focus. It's us and our relationship. We don't let any outside factors affect us.
You do marry the family, but it's up to you and your spouse to, insulate yourselves and your relationship from all that. Stand up for your spouse, even to your family. If you feel like your spouse is being hurt by something, if that's your family or not, you stand up for your spouse. You say, yo, that's not cool. And, we're not doing that. So when you get married, wife is number one priority. Your mom, still great, you love her, but you make sure your wife is good first. That's what the Bible says, that a man leaves his mother and father and clings to his wife, and they become one.
For anybody out there that has the same family setup as we do, just don't let outside factors affect anything within your relationship. So there's definitely a dynamic shift when we got married. And I'll say this because for a woman, everything in your life changes. Because you're moving out of your place to your partner's place. Like, just every single thing about my life changed, and it was like huge in my mind, because don't think I even thought about that part. Like, you get married, your last name changes, you have to do all this paperwork, you live somewhere completely new, you have new neighbors, you have a new route to work, you have to figure out all these different time stamps for everything happening in your life. I would say the strength in our relationship is definitely communication. We're really good at taking time to sit down and really talk things out, whether it lasts 1 hour or 3 hours, and making sure we are creating a lay of the land to where we understand each other even better, and sometimes it draws us even closer because we are creating our own path.
Making sure the other person feels heard. I think that's the biggest thing with communication, is not listening to respond, but listening to put yourself in that person's shoes, get some type of empathy for that person in that situation. Even if you don't agree with it, or even if you feel like you necessarily how it's viewed was not how it was, you still need to make sure that person, like I said, is heard. And then you go into giving your side of the situation and then figuring out how to rectify it. I think one thing that I've learned is that you can't say sorry, but just say sorry, then reiterate what you heard and confirm that, that is what your partner is feeling. I've learned when the person feels like they're heard and understood, they're more receptive to what it is that you did to hurt them, and then they can hear you better when you're trying to explain what happened. I think also letting the person be who they are, and you just kind of have to be like, okay, that's who that person is. That's what I married, that's the package. I cannot be upset about what it is they do or they don't do, because that's who they are, and that is something that is a part of them, and it's not harming you in any way. So you just kind of let that be their interest, that be, how they do certain things, whatever it is. You just kind of have to let them be them, and not make them feel bad about how they are.
Don't think that you can go into a relationship building your partner. They're not projects. Unless it's detrimental to your relationship, right. It's not a big deal. And then one thing I learned was during arguments, it was so hard for me to see myself doing something wrong. And so I did not like apologizing. It made me want to vomit because I did not think whatever I was doing was wrong. But then I got to the point to where I was like, I need to start making an effort to truly mean the apology and understand why I'm apologizing, because it's a big deal and it'll help us in our future.
The thing with marriage is that you are basically giving your partner a loaded emotional gun of your emotions, of your insecurities, of your vulnerabilities, and you're trusting this person not to use that gun on you.
Yeah, 2018 was a doozy. So I lost my grandmother, and that really put me in a bad place. And as soon as it starts to lift, Daniel, I think around August 2018, he started having these fevers, and he couldn't get his body temperature regulated, and he just had the chills. And he told me he tried to put a jacket on, it didn't work. And then he sat outside in his car in the sun, and that didn't help. And then he was coming home and he had the chills and just shaking. So we went to the ER, and we were there all day, and they just referred us to another doctor.
It was a mess.
But the day we found out what it actually was, crazy as it sounds, was on his birthday.
I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2018. And so that was, tough. I had to do, I think, 12 rounds of chemotherapy. That was rough on my body. And
that was definitely the lowest part of the relationship for me. Like the mama bear with my friends, and I just took that role and ran with it. Anytime I felt like I wanted to break down and cry, it was only when I was at home, like by myself. And I understood that like throughout the entire process, he was going to be at his weakest point, and I had to be the strong one for the both of us. Because in a relationship, there are going to be moments where you have to do more than your spouse, or vice versa, or sometimes it could be even killed.
I trusted God, and I know He was going to heal me and I was going to come out, so I wasn't worried about it. So I wasn't depressed or nothing like that. But it definitely was more work for Risha to just make sure I'm good. And that time I was very proud of her, because she's very, like she said, things need to be in order, and she's very particular about things, and she gets anxious about things. Instead of during that time being a worrier, she was a warrior. That's why I married her. Not saying I foresaw me having this illness, but I knew she's going to hold it down. My ride or die. I knew I had a real one, a good one.
And it was crazy because, like, he's right. He never got depressed. He never was in a dark moment. And at a point where we was unsure, because they were like, it could either be leukemia or non-Hodgkin's, which leukemia is normally fatal. And I don't know, it kind of makes me emotional because there was a moment where we thought like it was going to be the end, but the family fasted and prayed, and it ended up being what we wanted it to be, which was great. We thank God that it was, but like, man, that was a doozy. And it definitely made me stronger. And in my perspective, I feel like we did become even closer, because like not everybody gets to have that testimony, but like just knowing that like you get married and then like you think you're going to spend your whole life together, and then in one moment that could be over and done.
The goal for a marriage is just I think if we can keep it how it is, I'm good. Personally, just always staying closer to God and growing with God. What I've learned is honesty is the best policy, but Bishop used to always say, put a little bit of sugar on your words. And I think that has helped us a lot.
Sometimes I feel like honesty can be scary because it is something that you want to bring up, but you don't want it to cause any type of friction, because it might be so honest to where you'll need some space just because your partner didn't like what you said or didn't realize it was even something that you needed to discuss. But there are moments where I am honest about something and it could be like a little hurtful. Definitely make sure that you're honest no matter what, because it's only going to help you guys in the end.
I did kind of feel neglected in that I was home with these kids to handle the responsibilities at home. And him working a lot, I was working as well, but he was working multiple jobs, so I was home with the kids every evening and on the weekends, which I appreciated everything he was doing. Well, I don't know that I appreciated as much at the time.
And I just think that comes from, a lack of communication and growing up in two different backgrounds. She was raised with parents, both her parents in the house. I was raised with single. They definitely impacted our relationship at the time.
And at that time, we did not have common goals. We both were focused on being good parents, and I think we've always done a good job of that, but we didn't have a common goal in our marriage. So we fought about all of the things. We had times of having fun and laughing, but it was stressful.
Some of the most for me was her throwing my 30th birthday party. That was one of our memories at our house that we got. That was really, really good time we got to share with a lot of family and friends. And
although it was hard, it's just sometimes we could just be silly and fun. We had times of being lighthearted and laughing.
For me, it's when we really started to worship together and make God and church a priority for us. I think that's really sustained it, honestly. That's how we're still here today. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be where we are today.
I think my heart started to change. I got involved in a women's Bible study about 13 years ago, and the very first book we studied was Honor's Reward, which really wasn't specific to marriage, but the whole time I felt like God was just slapping me in the face to wake me up that it was about honoring authority figures in your life. And up until that point, I never saw him as an authority figure in my life. And that book really made me realize there's one leader in this family and it's not me. And while it was a hard transition, I think that's what really started changing my heart, that here I'm battling for some of the control, and that's not my place. So I started at that point really realizing that he's the leader of our family, and whether I like it or not, he has the final say. And again, it wasn't quick, but it slowly helped me start shifting.
I think I just came to the realization that it does take work and there's no perfect relationship. And at some point, I just kind of got, if I need to do this, I need to change how I respond to situations. I'm a pretty direct person, so my words come direct, and I don't necessarily mean them as harmful, but they come across like that. You know, my tone, I have tried to be a lot more intentional about absorbing some information and being intentional of how I respond and how this may come across. And I think that's really helped our relationship a lot.
I think we're really just now getting to where we can have good, honest communication without hurt, without tears and anger. One thing that I know he has really changed his tone, and that's a word that I've used many times in our relationship, but I had to tone down my sass too. Or even if I wasn't saying it or snapping back, it would still be in my heart. So I've really had to work on not snapping back at him and not having a response to everything he says.
Trying to get rid of the resentment for me was one of the hardest things to try to deal with. I can remember coaching myself all day long at work or coming home, and I would be like, man, I'm gonna do this, I want to have a good day, I want to show this, and then one thing that she would say or do would trigger me, and I'd go right back to the negative space that I was. So I really had to be intentional to know more of her heart than what was said, and I think that's the most important part, is trying to feel somebody out for what you know, who they are as a person, and try to look past the resentment and the hurt to really give them the benefit of the doubt and grace. It's not necessarily how they feel about you, it's just how they're interpreted where they are at that moment. I think making a conscious decision to really start tithing and be more givers, starting each day off with prayer, praying with each other every day was really, really big, because it puts you in a better place for the day, regardless of what may have happened the day before or the night before. Knowing you start each day off like that has been really a blessing for our relationship.
And being vulnerable with each other, because we had so many years of hurt that there was a lot of resentment and walls up. So when we started praying together, we opened our hearts up to each other like I don't think we ever had before.
It was actually safe, because it's pretty hard for her to judge me if I'm saying these things with her to the Lord. There's not going to be, I don't feel like there's going to be a whole lot of backlash. So I can start to say some things or show more vulnerability in that prayer time, because I'm saying it to the Lord, right? And it may happen to be about her, it might happen to be about me. I felt like it was just such a safe space to be able to open up and become vulnerable.
Well, it showed me that he's rising up to be the spiritual leader of our family, where early on, I don't think that was the case. So I saw the transformation in him, and it made me love him more, and it made me trust him more. Actually, during our 5th year of marriage, we were separated for a whole year. And during that time, I was praying, God, give me a sign that I can get out of this. We're not right for each other. This is so hard. This is not, I wanted out. During that time, actually, my sister pointed out to me, he's trying. Like, he's doing these things he's never done before. And it took that to point that out to me, to be able to see it and soften my heart towards him. And then, I don't know at what point he started going to church with us. We started worshiping together. That was huge for us.
Definitely her unconditional love, even when I didn't deserve it, her willingness to fight for her family is what gave me the ability to try to do the same.
He's a natural leader, and he works hard and is really disciplined. So I knew he was going to make sure we were taken care of no matter what. I say love is a decision, not a feeling. So every day you just have to decide, I'm here, I'm gonna do this, I'm committed to this, no matter how I feel.
Make sure that you are really good friends, like you enjoy each other. There's been a lot of times in our relationship, I've always loved her, but I didn't necessarily like her. I think love, once you establish that relationship, is pretty unconditional, but choosing to like somebody and choosing to like who they are or they're becoming as a person, I think that's really important. So trying to make sure you can stay friends is going to be the huge part.
One thing I feel very proud of that we've done well is raise our kids. I always, no matter how I felt about him as my husband, I knew he was a good dad. Actually, once he before he started going to church, he would for sure tell the kids, no, you're going to church with your mom, you're going to church with your mom. But once he started really practicing his faith, super impactful for our kids, especially our son.
I realized that she needed to be my primary focus and not my kids. And it took me a really long time to understand that. Since I came from a background with a single mom for a majority of my life, that me being a good dad was the most important thing to me. And that really caused some friction in our relationship. And I know that's not the way that God intended it. And our relationship suffered because of that. I thought I was doing the right thing. God intended for her to be the most important part and the children to be up under that umbrella. And so once I started to realize that, I think it really changed my perspective. I would advise everybody that that's not the way it's supposed to be. You need to put God first, your spouse, and then your children underneath that.
I remember getting advice that there's one person in this relationship you can control, and it's you. So I had to work on me, and I had to realize, oh, there are things I'm doing that's causing him to react in a certain way. So I think just focusing on me and growing myself, and I knew God wanted our family together. I knew that was the best thing. So at times I didn't want that, but I knew that we have to figure this out. That's what God wants. But I also know that he wants us to have a good, solid relationship that's a good example for others.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have to do a lot of internal self-reflection and be honest with yourself and be able to ask hard questions to yourself. Right now, I'm really working still trying to be more selfless. I made a lot of selfish decisions and they always turn out negative. So I want to be more selfless in our relationship and selfless in general. And I think that when you do that, it allows you to be more vulnerable and God's willing to open up more doors for you.
We had gone to
the Omega Ball because I had always wanted to go.
You know, the Mega Ball got over, and so we were leaving. And I told her, I was like, let's go down and see the Plaza Lights. Yeah, we were out, so it was nice little way to cap off the evening, On the way there, she starts kind of looking around. She's like, are we going to the Plaza Lights? And I said, yeah. Well, you kind of taking a different way. I was like, yeah, I'm taking a shortcut. She was like, oh, okay. And so we pulled up at the event space where the book signing was, where we initially met. And she's like, oh, I know where we are. And so pulled over and got her out the car, got down on the knee and asked her for her hand in marriage.
And I said yes. So we were engaged for a year. Engaged on New Year's Day, January 1st, and then married on New Year's Eve, December 31st. So we had a New Year's wedding, a reception, and a New Year's Eve party. Okay, all in one.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I felt it was like surreal. This was my first and only marriage, right? So it was just like, wow, this is really happening. We had a great time. We went past midnight. My bridesmaids did a dance. I'll leave it at that. We had our family there. It was a great time. And we have a blended family as well. And so it's just like a lot of adjustments, needed to be made. And like he said, sometimes you don't know until you're in it.
We have a daughter from a previous relationship of mine. Bringing Tay into the picture once we got serious was really vital and key to the growth of the three of us' relationship, our family. I was really intentional about doing that. One, I didn't want to give Tay the wrong impression and mislead her in any way, really kind of let their relationship kind of grow. Really, I would say kind of easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't have picked a better bonus daughter. I couldn't have picked a better one. Initially, I kind of felt like an outsider. It was them two, and they had their bonds, they had their routines. And so it's just like when you are trying to blend a family, it's not business as usual. Like everybody has to make room. When I was really kind of having a hard time, I was, kind of Googling stuff about, blended families, and there was a young lady, and she was saying that the only alone time that she was able to spend with her dad was when her dad picked her up on the way to the house. You want to be able to still nurture the individual relationships within the family. And so I'm aware of that. So it's like, okay, you know, maybe they're downstairs cooking and they're having their time together, you know what I mean? And we're still married during this process, so we still need our time together. And then me and Tay, we have developed such a great relationship. We have our girl time. So it's just like having those individual relationships strong has made the blended family stronger as a whole. And then the pandemic happens, right? So now we can't even go nowhere. But it really showed me that, one, we really liked each other, okay? Because you don't have all those external factors. People are not coming over. You can't really go anywhere. So you have to like communicate. And so we made the best of our time together.
Yeah, I think in some ways with the pandemic, it forced us to kind of figure out how to navigate being around each other. And so, especially being so early on in our marriage, I think that was really kind of a blessing in disguise for us to kind of figure out, you know, what works, what doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know, kitchen and cleaning and, you know, just kind of house duties and, you know, the kind of the triggers and things that, you know, don't necessarily, you know, you don't think about, you know, when you get married, but, you know, it came up probably faster because we weren't going anywhere. So you just have that many more dishes or that much more cleaning to do because you're there nonstop. So
yeah.
I would say post-marriage, most people have an idea of what marriage is supposed to be and what it's supposed to look like. While that may be true in some areas, more often than not, it's false. Like, it's not something that's real because you have, you know, two different people and two different backgrounds and ways of going about things. And so taking on the idea of a team concept has really been key and pivotal for us. Ultimately, we want the same thing. And so really trying to keep that at the forefront of our mind when we do things or approach something.
And I would add to that, giving yourself grace as you learn, as you adjust, as you grow.
So when I look Monique in the eyes, it just gives me a feeling of security and knowing that she has my back, like regardless of what's going on, you know, she's in my corner regardless of what's going on. If I really sit and think about it, you know, I can get emotional because, you know, I know there are people that don't have that or haven't experienced that. It really gives me peace in knowing that God had you for me.
Your marriage doesn't have to be a drag. It doesn't have to be laborious, like, oh my gosh, here we go. You know, it can be a beautiful thing. And I'm glad to be experiencing that today.
Our wedding day, so the morning, it was really dreary outside. The weather, it was not a sunny day. I was just still happy to go ahead and get married, and we got married at my old church. It wasn't a big thing. I had a bridesmaid, my sister, and my best friend. It was just so much love. We had two candle lighters. One was a friend from our church, Sonia, and his niece, Sylvia. And I believe it was, I don't remember which one, I think Sylvia. She kept trying to light the candle on her side. It would not light, until she just walked away. They just had to leave it, and my pastor, which was Pastor Cleotis Collins, he married us, and
when he prayed,
at the end, he prayed for our marriage. And it was like, all of a sudden, that candle that would not light, it just lit up. The sun came out. It was like God was letting us know that I got y'all, and you're going to be all right.
And keep in mind, too, that I wasn't in church. I believe God was showing us back then the reason the candle didn't light. I think it was like a revelation once I gave Ashley my life to Christ and my commitment to Christ. The candle lit. The candle lit was an indicator when he began to pray. And I'm telling you, that man prayed for our marriage. And when he got finished, the candle itself just lit. And literally people out there in the audience like, oh. But when we got into the marriage, after everything was said and done and the honeymoon was over, we was just the opposite. Like night and day. We would bump heads, we would argue.
I would say the first 5 years of our marriage was hard. It was very hard.
It was very hard.
Because like my husband said, we were opposite. We loved each other. But I changed some things to make the relationship work, as he did the same thing. And I can see how it balanced our character. Because I do believe that even young people now, they're marrying the idea of the husband that they want. That's why I tell young people now, don't get into lust. It's good not to sleep together if that's not your hook, because that can change how you feel. That makes you emotional. You see the red flags, but you have soul tied and you miss it. God is so good, because at that time at my old church, we had a mission group, junior mission, and they asked me to be the Bible teacher. Like, I'm not no Bible teacher, but I went on and took it, and that caused me to study and to know God. And I went from, he would go out to the club and arguing before he get ready to go out, and you need to do this and you need to do that, until I truly fell in love with God. And it wasn't an argument anymore. He get ready to go out. Sometime God will help me minister to him.
I wasn't heartless, but I just didn't care. You know, I'm a grown man now. You know, I'm gonna take care of mine, but I'm gonna get mine. And again, it had to take God. It had to be a personal encounter. And I never forget it, May 16, 1992, one of my friends got killed.
We had a revival coming up. In our district meeting, I remember the lady teaching, some things come out only by prayer and fasting. So we were all gonna fast that week. And my prayer was that week, God, if it's nothing but one person, let somebody get saved. And the week before our revival, his barber got killed in a car wreck. And I remember us going to the funeral. We're over at the funeral. He said he had like an outer body experience. Like nobody was in there but him, the casket, and the preacher. And when we left the funeral home, he was like, I'm giving my life to Christ. And I was sitting over there rolling my eyes. And the next day at church, Pastor Collins opened the door of church.
Walk right down.
He was the first one walk down. He tried to go out that Saturday night after the funeral.
Couldn't do it.
He said he couldn't drink. It made him sick. And his friends was like, Hood, what's wrong with you? You look different. Like, what's wrong with you? Even when he went to work, it was a great change. And that's what actually saved our marriage.
It was kind of like Saul on the Damascus road. And I looked at my wife and I said, you don't have to ever worry about me again.
We started going to marriage retreats. I will never forget the first marriage retreat we went, because we had hard times.
Yeah, we was
the work was arguments.
Yeah.
And making up and learning from the arguments.
The making up was
and just learning when to shut up, what he like, what to do, what she like.
Prior to that, we was on the edge, man.
Yeah.
We was riding, our marriage was riding on thin ice, to be honest with you. And she talked me into this marriage retreat because I was done. I'm like this, seriously, I'm like,
at the marriage retreat.
I said, I'll go. And I'm sitting up here, we got our bags. It was really set up nice, but I wasn't gonna say nothing. And I'm looking up like this. I'm ready just to interrupt to say something negative. And I'm in the back like, and my wife just gently just waiting. And I tell you, when they was in the middle of the Word of God and marriage, I was like, I started moving up front more. and more, because I never heard a teaching that way. You know, it was explained so differently. And I was like, wow. The next day I was like, yeah. Can I say, I was, for us now, we will recommend that for young people. Mm-hmm. It's almost like a must because it enhances your marriage. You think you know it all or done it all, or nobody can't tell you too much about the word when it comes to marriage. You ain't in my household. You don't know my wife. But the word of God sums it up, and he has prophets, he has teachers, he has ministers to break the word down in different shapes and forms. And I wasn't used to that. And I was just captivated, man. You know, I embraced it.
It was really a blessing. Even when we came to EC, they had marriage classes, and we began to get different books, learning what a love language is through Sunday school. There were other couples at the church, and they would invite us over. We would start to go meet at each other's house and eat together.
Or fellowship.
And just being with other couples that love each other and seeing love and what it looks like, going on trips together with other marriage couples. And so now it's more like my husband likes to, babe, let's study the word together. Those are things that continue to draw us closer and to build up
our relationship.
I'm sure sometimes he still don't like me, and sometimes I do not like him, but I still love him. And we're committed to each other. We got to a point. We're not going to be married and not be happy.
Yeah.
Like, what are we together for? If we're not going to be married and not be happy, let's just not do it. I'm a 7th grade math teacher. There are prerequisites. You don't just start in the 7th grade. There are things you do to build up to get to that. So let marriage counseling be a prerequisite. Put down the technology. Spend time with each other and know each other. Whatever it takes to make this work.
Fall in love with God. That's the foundation. That's concrete, son. And after that, you can see more beauty in your mate or your spouse. If I had to do it all over again, I'd do it all over again.